Addiction is not just a substance abuse problem. Addiction is an avoidance problem. Addiction can be a plethora of things. And my description of recovery, right, is that when you step on the path of recovery, you're actually trying to recover the life that you were really meant to be living here.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality. If you are new here, my name is Kat. I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. If you're returning, thank you so much. Joining me today, I have Jen, but who mostly goes by Sunshine, the pink-haired sober witch. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I feel like this is a super important topic to cover, and I really appreciate your time being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you, Kat. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Do you want to jump in and just introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about your journey and how it is you got to doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. Once upon a time in 2010, I had a little 3-year-old girl start to call me Auntie Sunshine, and nobody knew why, so it kind of stuck. But we fast forward from 2010 into, there was a whole bunch of things that happened, but 2019 was really the biggest one. And I started that year after watching my father almost pass away from alcoholism and a cousin who was about a year younger than me pass away from alcoholism, and knew that I needed to take a look at my relationship with alcohol. And, I started that year, January of 2019, trying to go just 90 days without drinking. And I made it about 83 days before somehow or another, the disease convinced me to drink again. And I drank daily again up until about July that year. So we're talking about almost, 4 months of daily drinking until the time I came off of a 10-day vacation and was at work on a Monday morning and saw myself going through detox, sweating, heart palpitations, and I was horrified at this. And so I stepped into my therapist's office that night, broke down bawling, and told her, probably expressed it for the first time in my entire life, that I was an alcoholic. And I would love to say that at that point everything changed, but we keep going, and I'm just about 60 days without drinking, and I step on a plane and head down to Costa Rica to celebrate my 40th birthday. And my partner at the time, who I loved very dearly, also struggled with his own addiction problems. And we step off the plane in Costa Rica, and he walks straight over to duty free and buys 2 half-gallons of liquor.
Yeah.
I made it about 4 hours after we checked into our resort until he leaned over a number of drinks in and said, "Don't worry, I won't judge you." And that was it. That's all it took. But I ended up home, returning, crying and bawling because something had to change, and I realized at that point that I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I could not, my pride had to be put aside. And this was something that I knew I desperately needed help to face. And so I was very scared and stepped into the very traditional 12-step program of AA. And I did 90 meetings in 90 days. And after I made it past that 90 days, I remember looking back and finally being a little bit clear-headed for the first time after about 87 days straight of crying. And realizing something was kind of weird for me. I would talk at these tables and I would talk with all of these people, and so many people, even though we were all kind of there as the collective, in recovery, so many of these people had something else that was going for them. They had church, they had community, they had, these other things that were really giving them some, purpose in life. And so I sat back and I asked myself, what did I need? What did I need to lean into my own spirituality? What did I need, to believe in something that was greater than me, that was going to be able to keep me on my road to recovery? And the reality is, I'd identified as a witch since I was about 16 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from that point forward, I dove headfirst into my own spiritual path. I started to incorporate my own witchcraft in a daily basis. I pulled out a tarot card deck and fired up a Facebook page and started giving away free readings once a week as well. That was my church, is what I called it. That was my way of kind of, staying connected, giving back, and, frankly, being of service in some regards.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly enough, people started asking to pay me for it. They wanted more, they wanted longer readings, more in depths. And so surprisingly, I gave birth to a business. I had no intentions, no plan to, but I did. And, I continued going down that path for quite some time, in my own recovery, and building some programs and starting to teach and starting to coach and starting to mentor. And it was so beautiful. Like, it was really fulfilling. I found a lot of joy in it. I found a lot of my own healing in it. And this past winter, though, I remember meditating one of those days, and Spirit spoke to me and they said, "You've actually got to focus on witches in recovery." And I went, "Ooh, are you serious about that? Like, that seems, in a business world, people always say you have to get your niche." But I was like, God, is there even enough? Like, are there really more of me out there?
Absolutely there are, for sure. I can raise my hand right now and tell you that there are, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that was the eye-opening thing to me, is I ended up stepping out of my corporate job at the end of April this year and started to shift all of my focus to that, and started to communicate and started to offer just what I referred to as what I had rewritten as my 12 steps. I call it the 13 steps, right? The witch's 13 steps to recovery. And the response has been humbling, just
Yeah.
humbling. And so, yeah, I say, I'm Sunshine, the pink-haired sober witch, and my mission here in life is to help witches step into recovery using their spiritual beliefs of witchcraft.
Yeah. I appreciate that mission so much. I was, like I said, very excited to have you on here, very excited to put this message out. There is a tendency among spiritual communities to kind of put their guru face forward, right? Like, people kind of want to put on the appearance of light and love, and put on this kind of perfect appearance. But I don't think it's spoken about out loud enough
Mm.
that the spiritual path is a rough one for a lot of people. It comes with a lot of ups and downs, because inherently in it is the looking inward, the facing of shadows, the going through all of that shadow work. And that is not an easy journey for anybody to go through. And I think there is a big need for a recovery program or help in community with that isn't strictly Christian centered.
Absolutely. And I love that you kind of brought that. I swear to God, you were sitting here next to me yesterday. I had this conversation with a client yesterday because they had they'd asked me to mentor them on their psychic development for a while, but when I do that individually, it's a price tag, right? Like, that's one-on-one work, and they were hesitant because they were just curious, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to pay just for curiosity, so they signed up with somebody else. And then I get a message yesterday for an emergency session with them, that they feel like they opened the door to something. And so they start sharing about it, and they're talking about, oh, the woman was really lovely and she was all about light and love and light and love. And I was like, yeah, here's the issue. I said, and I had to express I said, when I see spiritual practitioners and they focus and emphasize on the light and love, they are ignoring the whole duality of life that comes in the darkness,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it's a dangerous place to be in, right? Ignorance does not mean that it doesn't exist, right? Being ignorant to the fact or avoiding it doesn't mean, and how many, the truth is I've literally watched and felt the energetic of people that exude love and light, and I can feel the mask.
Yes. Yeah.
I can feel them trying to present that front as a way to avoid all of that stuff that bubbles underneath the surface.
Yeah. The reality is you, okay, so there is a lot of love and light, but you are going to travel through the shadows to get there. And you are going to keep dipping your toes back in those shadows, off and on throughout the journey. So presenting it like you can just skip over that and get to a place of peace and love and light without really examining
Mm.
the energetic blockages, the traumas, and the things that are within that are actually keeping you in a negative space is not going to be a thing, right? Like you're going to have to actually self-heal and examine things.
Yeah, or just keeping you from the evolution of where you could be, right?
Hmm.
Like and to me it's really hard to be in a 5D space or a 6 or 7 or 8, whatever D you want to consider, when you're only looking at the love and the light, right? To me, like, you have to be willing to face and release all of those things. And it's just, yeah, you cannot avoid the fact that I don't care who you are, there is always something in our lives that has left a shadow, right?
Hmm.
And until you're willing to be able to face that, you're never going to see the light in the way that it truly is meant to shine on you.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is going through those things, especially if you weren't expecting them, if you thought you were walking into love and light and weren't expecting to have to walk through the shadows or whatever the case may be for people, that does tend to lend itself to looking for some external comfort, looking for some external shutdown, things like alcohol, things like drug abuse, other addictions. It can be food addictions, it can be whatever it is. It tends to want to manifest and look for some sort of outside comfort or soothing action. And I think, again, most of us were not like prepared for that. I didn't know that it was a thing that could happen. It wasn't like being fortified against it. And even when you are, it's still easy to slide into those patterns. Personally, my abilities clicked in when I was a kid. I was like 12 years old, but I had no control over them whatsoever. And I leaned on substance abuse for a long time just to shut it down, just to numb out, just to not have to be able to pretend like it wasn't actually happening.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only time I could sleep was a bunch of marijuana and vodka at like
Yep.
15, 16 years old. So I actually found myself in AA or recovery programs like court mandated Alcoholics Anonymous when I was 15 years old. And
No,
that's not the place for a 15-year-old psychic who can't control her
no.
abilities. It was not a helpful situation or program at all.
I can't imagine what that would have been like, because I remember, and I don't know if I'd shared this story when we talked before. I remember sitting at the tables, and here I'm 40. I'm 40 years old, right? So I've got some time behind me. I've built up a little bit of resilience, to judgment and things of that nature. I identified as a witch since I was 16, so I was kind of used to sometimes being looked at a little bit funny. And
Mhm.
we were talking, and I kept referring to my higher powers,
Mhm.
my higher powers, And somebody literally pulled me aside afterwards to correct me. And I just wanted to let you know that you kept saying higher powers, and I think you meant higher power.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
they're very
I was like, nope, nope, nope. Actually, I meant higher powers. I said I work with all of my ancestors, a number of deities, and they're just like, their eyes bugged out and their jaws just, oh, okay,
yeah.
right. But if I was 15, there's no way. I wouldn't have spoken up. I wouldn't have been able to be honest. I wouldn't have felt comfortable, standing my ground on certain things. And I sure as hell wouldn't have been able to handle the fact that I'd asked 5 women to sponsor me and they all told me no.
Really.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. That's what it's
5 women. Right. Okay. I was like, all right, well, that's fine. I guess AA is not really for me.
No, well, I know for sure it definitely wasn't for me as a teenage girl in the downtown church surrounded by people who were, 2 and 3 times older than I was. And really, it was forced upon me. It was like absolutely not the environment,
No.
right? Absolutely not helpful. And there
No.
was no way in hell that I'm going to be able to tell a bunch of Christian people like what the issue is.
Yeah.
I can't
No.
say, yeah, I'm drinking because I can't control the clear audience. I can't control
Yeah.
my astral projection.
Yeah.
I just need to be able to sleep.
Yeah.
But trust me, there's no way a minor who has no control over what happens to them can actually be honest with adults. It's not safe.
No, it's not safe. And
So,
it's not safe even just from that perspective, but the scary thing is, and there's people, if anybody's listening and they're familiar with the 12-step program, they very well may be familiar with the what is unofficially known in the 12-step programs as the 13th step. Are you familiar with this?
Girl, I was not paying that close of attention to
So
your
it's
cluster
horrible.
program.
It's horrible. It's the most horrible thing. Number one, as a witch, the number 13 means a lot to me, right?
Yeah.
We have 13 cycles throughout the year, right?
Hmm.
It's 13 is associated to Hecate, who is the goddess of witchcraft. It's a very powerful number for a witch.
Hmm.
The 13th step in a traditional program is a joke of a individual that is older and been around the program and is predatory towards somebody that comes in that's new.
Ew.
Yep, that guy over there was 13th step and the newcomer. Yeah. I was so mad at that one. I was just like, really? Really? And then obviously you start to see it, right? Your eyes are open and you're like, oh my God, this is happening. Oh
Yeah.
my God. So yeah, I say I took back that 13th step in the witch's 13th step to recovery. That 13th step is a collective ritual to rid the world of addiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And there's power in reclaiming that. And I feel like there's power in putting something out there that is actually a safe space for practitioners to be in recovery and feel comfortable opening up, feel comfortable talking about their journey and some of the things that might be affecting them that there's no way you could ever talk about in a church recovery program. It's just not going to it's not going to land. And, if anything, there's going to be a bunch of ridicule and it's just not very comfortable. So having the resource for people to be able to reach out to a safe space to talk about their recovery in a way that's embracing rather than judgmental at best and I guess predatory at worst. That's
Oh, God. Yeah, I know. And I was similar to you. It wasn't until I stepped into recovery that I could look back and see that I was using, the addiction, whether it was food or, because it was food for me a lot as a child too. There was a
Mhm.
lot of eating in order to dampen things and to lessen the emotional. I would say as a child, my strongest was more clairvoyance and clairsentience, right? I could feel
Mhm.
things and I could see things. The auditory didn't happen until I got older. Thank the gods on that one, because that one is probably one of the most like crazy making ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I did the same thing. I would drink, I would eat all to dampen these, and I look back and I'm like, how how many other people are out there suffering, right? And don't even necessarily realize. So this is like when people sit down and they talk to me and they're like, I have a lot of anxiety, I have a lot of depression. I was like, okay, really, let's talk about it. I said, is this like, what do you have to be anxious? They're like, and they won't have anything. I was like, who's around you? Who do you live with? Right? And that's where I'll start to realize this ain't you. You're picking up on somebody else's anxious energy. You're picking up on somebody else's depression. Like there are other people around you that are impacting you, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, God, I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah, I think this is a very powerful moment in time to talk about the empathic ability or the ability of people who are sensitive to energy, sensitive to collective energies and energies that are around them.
Mhm.
This is not something that's taught to people in general. And so with so much anxiety out there, so much worry out there, and it can be coming from people you pass in the hallways, it can be coming from people that you live with in your home, it can be coming from conversations with family members that the ability to separate out what is your internal feelings versus what other people's the energy that you're feeling coming from other people is, I think, a very, very big step in sorting out addiction and recovery and understanding some of your feelings were always projected onto you by others, right?
Oh, I I think that there's a lot of us that have these, gifts more heightened, more natural, right? I think
Hmm.
there's some people have them naturally, some people pick them up quickly, and then some people actually have to really learn how to use them. And those of us that have them naturally, right? These are going to be the folks that identify as highly sensitive. These are going to be the folks that identify as an empath. These are the individuals that also there's a couple of like kind of symptoms that I've always identified. The I told you so's is a really big symptom, right? When you know that you're always giving advice and people aren't following it, That is like a huge symptom of like you're literally getting claircognizant downloads,
Yeah.
right? And you're sharing them, but these people aren't receptive. And the other thing too, you know, and insomnia. To me, if you've ever suffered with insomnia since you were a child, there's a high probability that you are highly sensitive, highly psychic, and you just aren't aware of it.
Yeah. If you've
Yeah.
always been a quote unquote night person, like you're
Oh
the
my
kind of
God.
person who literally functions better. It took me a long time to realize that the reason I function better at night is literally because everyone else is asleep.
Yeah. See,
There's less interference in the energy. There's less. That's when I feel that I can feel the trees and the softness, and I can feel like with
the
everyone
calm.
else unconscious and in their dream sphere, I function way better in that energy. And I for a long time I couldn't understand why I was an insomniac or why I'm a night person, why I function better at night. It took a long time to realize that. Yeah.
Working in corporate America as long as I did, I was able to shift a lot of that to early morning. So like
Yes.
from like 5 until 8 was like a lovely time. And and it allowed me to operate in that corporate space. But yeah, the same thing. And, I'll say the pandemic, though a horrible thing for the world to go through, for many of us, an absolute blessing, right? Forced into our homes, limited exposure to other people. I learned more about myself during that time and being able to like control and monitor my environment than I ever would have if I was continuing to have to go into an office every single day. I was
Yeah.
able to recognize and understand how unbelievably sensitive I actually am.
Yeah. It sometimes it takes a separation from those energies before you start to realize that they were never your energies to begin with and be able to actually start feeling the difference. Um, I've never been so confused and messed up and sick as I was in high school,
Oh
right?
God.
I didn't know what was happening. I would be nauseous every day, just walking down the hallways, so much angsty energy walking around in the sphere. And again, when I look back on it, I realize that, it's understandable how I ended up using substances, with no resources, no understanding, a family that was not spiritual people, and really nobody to connect or talk to, and feeling all of these things all the time. Recognizing that that's where some of the addiction and the substance abuse came from to begin with helps to unravel and release some of the guilt or the self-judgment of how did I get myself in this mess? You know what I mean? To have some self-forgiveness and be able to look back on things in a totally different light.
That's 100%. There's something interesting also, and maybe you share a similar perspective in a 12-step program. As you go through this step 4 of creating this moral inventory, and there's all these like frankly like shitty things that people were doing to other people, and I'm going like, but I didn't do these things.
Yeah.
I didn't do these things. And then finally, as I'm talking to my therapist, we start to uncover, oh yeah, I was just doing them all to me.
Yeah.
I was doing all that shitty stuff to me. I was being mean to me. I was belittling myself. I wasn't giving myself the respect that like all of these things, right? It was nothing to do with the other people. It was more so I was betraying myself, right? And so you talk about forgiveness of self. Like, yeah, that was like a huge deal in the first year of recovery, of learning how to forgive myself, not judge
Mhm.
myself, and to release the guilt and the shame that
Yeah.
came with years of conditioning and addiction. Oh,
It's a
100%.
different vibe than what's normally laid out in 12-step programs.
And this is the hardest part for me in a lot of that, is because you do this moral inventory and then at some point you're supposed to like make amends, and any of the times when I did find certain things that maybe I did inflict on other people, I would run into this like wall that I would get of like this consideration of making amends, because to me, I would also be like opening up my own wound at the same time, right? To
Mhm.
go make an amends to somebody, right? Like, horrible story. There was a gentleman that once upon a time used to use me, in a physical way, and I allowed it.
Mhm.
And I was a absolute jerk to them this one particular time. And so this was the list of like my violation of someone else. Like I was really mean to this person. And then I'm like, but if I go make this amends, like, do you see like the pattern there? Like, I was really allowing myself to be violated. So I
Mm.
would be opening this wound up for myself again, potentially, risking them coming back at me and like shaming me or guilting me in this, just perpetuating it. So that eighth step is actually the amends is through spell work,
Yeah.
right? To do spell work, to actually do spell work, to do, something for them to shift and change the energetic of whatever that infliction is, whether it is on yourself or whether it is on somebody else, right? Rather than trying to, my belief is when we've actually truly offended somebody throughout our life, we will either find ourselves in an opportunity to just naturally say, I'm sorry at some point, or we would have already said it.
That's it's such a hard energy to get into because, and I know, I mean, I can really only speak from personal experience, but I know that to me, in order to make amends truly would require, like in a physical confrontation way, in that actual 3D way, would also require the other person in the situation to be on a healing journey and to have some contrition. And so I think for a lot of people, you can't make those 3D physical amends with
Yeah.
people who aren't also on a healing journey and aren't also uh, willing to meet you there.
Yeah.
So it's more powerful, I think, to actually, like you did, do the spell work or do the energy work to release yourself from that guilt, to
Mhm.
make amends with yourself, make amends with it spiritually, make amends with, they were in this place and I was in this place, and and that's okay. It's a past energy that I worked through, and kind of allow yourself, forgive yourself, and make amends with your own path and make amends with your own journey.
100%, because the reason that whole step exists in that 12-step program is to release people of the guilt that causes them to potentially step back into a relapse, right?
Yeah.
And so like you don't have to literally speak to someone to release that guilt, and it can cause more damage. So to me, it's finding the way to transmute whatever that guilt is into something else. That's why I think spell work, the alchemy of it can be very beautiful. I had a literal daily ritual my first year where I would do a sun salutation. And in that sun salutation, I also added the pigeon pose. And on one, when I would put my right hip up, I would release all guilt. And when I switched and I did to my left, I would release all shame. And I would watch it literally energetically moving out of my body, right? And transmuting itself all the way into love for myself. And I would imagine that love for myself coming right back in.
Yep.
It took about a year, but I will tell you still to this day, it is very rare that I will ever sit in the feeling of shame or guilt for more than about 3 seconds.
Yeah. I think it's a part of a healing journey for a lot of people to have to go back and re-examine some things from a broader perspective in their life, right? To be able to accept pieces of their journey. That's kind of the shadow work, really, is being able to go through those ups and downs and be able to embrace and accept those as part of the expansive journey of being here. Nobody came here to play it safe and be bored, right? We all came here to go through those peaks, those highs and those lows. It's a frequency almost of life. You know how the frequency or the pattern, right? It's, we go through those as the human experience. Making amends with that, feeling at peace with that, feeling okay with it. It also helps to make it okay when you get there again. And I think that's a big part of the recovery process, is accepting when it comes down and knowing that it will come back up. It's a part of the journey. And so we don't have to fall quite so down into despair as to relapse or fall back into that pattern. But knowing that this downwards part is just as powerful and just as important as the upwards part, because it's what creates our frequency as a person.
I love that you keep doing it as the frequency. I've often shared with people, that I don't shy away. My goal is to allow that dip to be as quick as possible,
Mhm.
right? And then to extend the up. Like, that's how I want to live. I want my frequency I want to drop, but I want to sit in it just as much as I need to sit in it. I want to allow it to fully integrate. I want it to allow it to process. I don't want to avoid it at all. I don't want to be distracted by anything else because I want to be fully present in whatever that sorrow or despair or strife is. And just, I mean, sometimes it's a temper tantrum. Don't get me wrong. I'm still human, and I'll pout. Like, but I will still allow it to be exactly what it needs to be. And it is a reminder of how fucking beautiful life actually is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the pattern is what a lot of people do is it's the opposite, because the good is so briefly lived and then we end up down here and that's what's being extended, right? So the idea is to actually flip that frequency to get it to where, like, yeah, absolutely, get down in there, feel it, throw a fit, scream, cry, whatever you need to do to embrace. It's people, we've been taught or socialized that feelings, like those extreme feelings, are wrong. We shouldn't put them on other people. We shouldn't express them. It's overly emotional. It's ugly. It's childish. Like, there's all kinds of words and socializations. People are genuinely uncomfortable with ugly feelings, and they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with their own, and they don't know what to do with other people's. And there's nothing to do with it. You just feel them. Let them be, let them, right? Let them out. It's okay. And what happens is when you embrace that and you let them go, you flip the frequency and you can go, okay, yep, that's what it was. And now we're back up here. And like, to your point, you're extending the good parts rather than extending the negative parts. So yeah, I think that's a great way of thinking about it, and a great way of looking at it is the human soul is a frequency that we decide what that frequency looks like.
You're spot on that we decide, because there is, there's a couple of things too, that I remember talking about in that first year of recovery that I still talk about today. And that is, we have a choice. Every single day we wake up and we have a choice as to how we're going to face the world. Right. And even though we might be in that despair, and we can totally feel it and experience every bit of it, we still have the choice to say, okay, I'm learned. I'm okay. Everything's all right. And now I'm going to choose to take a different action. I'm going to choose to do something differently. I'm going to choose to see, I'm going to choose to practice gratitude now, because I'm done sitting in it, and I want to raise my vibration back up and enjoy, I want to stand on top of the mountain and I want to see the sunrise. And I want to, hear the birds sing, and I want to, listen to the way that the wind rustles the leaves on the trees, and just be so grateful that I get to hear that,
Absolutely.
We get to choose how we respond to the world around us.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to keep in mind that, how do I say this well? Those down peaks are actually what's creating your strength and stability in the up peaks, because toxic positivity is a thing as well. And it's what happens when you can't hear nothing that isn't positive. You literally can't face anything. I think it's sometimes what happens with like, how do I say this? Chronically religious people, is that, it all has to be their way. And the minute they hit any resistance, they have no way to deal with that resistance or that down peak. Like, embracing your downs and ups actually gives you the strength and solidarity to be able to face resistances or face when things aren't going well. And some people who want to live only in positivity and don't want to look at anything else literally can't be faced with when something eventually, inevitably happens where there's resistance to that positivity. They don't know how to lean into their down peaks.
And this is where we go, kind of full circle right back to addiction, right? Because that toxic positivity is probably an addiction to avoidance. Yeah. Right. It's an addiction to their religion. Right. It's an addiction to, this ignorance that there isn't, things in life that truly just have to be hard. That's the truth. And, I think there's a lot of times, and, when I speak of the work and stuff that I do, people often ask, my drug of choice was alcohol. That was the one that robbed me of a lot of things in my life. It just was. I have other addictive behaviors, though. And I do think it's important that people recognize addiction is not just a substance abuse problem. Addiction is an avoidance problem. It's an avoidance of the difficult things that are happening in life. It's avoidance of the truth of, like, there is shit that happens in life, life is not all as we started talking about love and light,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so addiction can be a plethora of things. And my description of recovery, right, is that when you step on the path of recovery, you're actually trying to recover the life that you were really meant to be living here.
Yes. Yes, I love that. That's a really powerful message. And you can have an addiction. An addiction can be anything that you are habitually holding on to that's not serving you.
Yep.
So it literally could be an addiction to religion or an addiction to your point, food or yeah, anything that you're
There's,
cleaving to that's actually not serving you. There's a reason, there's an energetic reason why we're cleaving to that. So,
and I'll tell you, if anybody's ever, anybody that's listening is wondering, it's just popping into mind. It's how do you know if it's an addiction versus like, because there's some, things that people would consider as healthy. Um, and I would really say, do you feel confident talking to everybody about it? Would you unequivocally share? Would people be well receptive of it? An example that comes to mind, there's a very overzealous person in my family circle who has a daughter who's gay, and they chastise her all the time. And people call her out for it. People call her mom out for it. Like, why are you treating your daughter that way? I mean, how
mhm.
is that, and that's it. This person is caught in an addiction of whatever their belief is, and it's impacting the love and the relationship that they could have with their daughter.
Yeah, yeah. That's that, like I said, like people with the toxic
Hmm.
positivity, any resistance that comes up in it, like a child
Yeah.
that doesn't meet your standard of what positive would be, and they can't navigate it. It has to just not be in their experience because they don't have
Yep.
the strength of the down peaks,
Yeah.
accepting the down peaks to help reinforce that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild and it can really mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people out there. And I'm just pleased and excited that you are offering programs for people that actually do the energetic work, the witchy work, if you will, that
Oh
goes
yeah.
along with recovery and is an open environment for people who are not who who are not well suited to classic recovery programs because I think it's such important work. Do you want to shout out and let people know where they can find you?
Absolutely. You can always visit illuminate.unschool.com. So it's called Illuminate the Unschool of Sober Witchcraft. The biggest program in there that I've got right now is the Recovery Coven. Right. So it's a monthly membership. There's a ton of stuff that I offer for free, all sorts of materials for free, but you can find everything on illuminateunschool.com. There's a mobile app. I'm addicted to social media. I'm not going to lie. It's
Yeah.
probably the number one relapse that I have on a regular
Yeah.
basis. So I built a mobile app because I don't want to be on social media. And I know there's a lot of other people that they want to be a part of a community, but they don't want to be caught up in the social media aspect of things because it's really hard to avoid all the other crap that's on there.
The internet algorithms are more sensitive than law of attraction. Like
Yeah.
let you be engaged with the wrong thing for 2 seconds and your whole feed will will end up
Or
full of
or
creepy
the right
morbid.
thing for 2 seconds, because man, do I get some pretty interesting videos of some really good looking gentlemen every now and again.
Yeah, yeah, those internet algorithms are super sensitive to wherever your attention went, and it will bring you more of it. So it is difficult to be on there for any length of time. If you're having a peak down,
Oh my
right, is
God.
not the time to be on social media because your feed
No.
will absolutely end up full of reinforcing energy, right? So it's a big pitfall for people to keep an eye out for and watch out for is when you're in one of those down peaks,
Yeah.
turn to your recovery app. Don't get on Facebook and look for people to commiserate with because your whole feed will do nothing but reinforce that energy that
Yes.
you're in for
Oh God,
sure.
I can't even. You are spot on, and I've been called to take another sabbatical from it just because we are about to venture in. For folks that are
Oh,
listening,
yeah.
the world is in a weird space right now, and if you thought that we were through it, we've just begun it. And so, if you are compelled, to ever take a break, and you're being pinged, or this just resonated with you, please
Mhm.
know it is possible to step away. You just got to make the choice to do it.
Absolutely. And I will put all of those links in the description for people so that they can click on it and download the app and get involved. I do think it's very, very beneficial right now for people to have something on their phone that's not algorithm driven, that's
Yeah.
not, do you know what I mean? So
Oh,
that they have
100%.
a community to turn to that's not driven by the powers that be right now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's a very powerful thing.
it's a chit chatter in a couple of spiritual communities that I'm in right now where folks are trying to figure out how to get out of them and find other ways to connect. And so absolutely
Absolutely.
100%. And I'll tell you so much to the point that two additional things that once upon a time were behind kind of like the membership are being pulled out because of this reason. We are pulling out the weekly recovery circles. Those will be completely free on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. You can join on Zoom from anywhere that you wanted. And we do one open talk, which is a guest speaker every month, and the other three are actually closed, very circle related, where you can talk, communicate, and share. And then the other thing is I will be activating the community feature directly within the app as well. I had not
Yeah.
had it turned on, but that'll be being turned on because, as I said, I'm being called to be taken off of social media, and I would strongly recommend anybody that also has that pull to take that step, even if it's just for a couple of months.
It's such a massive energy right now that absolutely finding positive and non algorithm driven communities to involve yourself with is super important. I would love to extend to you personally if there is any way I can help. Let me know. I absolutely will. I'll push that out on all of my feeds to get the information out to people. If you guys are watching this and you want to share the information, share out the links, get them out on your social medias, 100%. I mean, I should let you say that, but
No, I mean, absolutely. I adore it. It is probably one of the most common ways that it's being shared right now is other people are sharing it with folks.
yeah.
And I adore it. Like I said, this work is humbling to me. But I have found a really nice place to get a lot of resources that are absolutely at no cost. And for those that want to kind of, I like to say, level up that the real witchy side of it, that's where the membership comes into place. And frankly, it's pretty damn affordable for what's included. So, not
Yeah,
gonna
for
lie.
sure. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much. I appreciate the work that you're doing so much. It's powerful, it's important, it's empowering, which is the most important part is to take your power and empower other people with it. And I'm just overjoyed to have you on the show. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you so much, Kat. I appreciate it.
And thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate you always. Like, subscribe, go follow Sunshine, and we will see you guys next time on Spirituality.